Good day and welcome to your first session with me. My name's Nichole Brinch, but everyone calls me Nikki. What are we going to be working on today? Today we are going to be acing Afrikaans because Afrikaans will not get the best of us. So, what are we going to work on first? So I found that a lot of grade 12 struggle with active and passive voice. Sometimes it's quite easy in English or even tricky in English, but I found if you know how to do it in English or you have the basic idea of it, you will know how to do it in Afrikaans because the rules of the two are quite similar. So what is active voice? Okay, active voice tells us what a person or thing does. Quite often they're doing an action to something else. So the person in an active voice sentence, that is the subject. The thing that they are doing something to is an object. So for example, here, Nikki, which is me, I am doing my homework. I am not chewing my homework or throwing it away. I'm actually doing it. So I am doing an action. I am the subject. The thing that I'm doing an action to, that is my homework. I am doing my homework. That is the object. So what is passive voice then? Well, it tells us what is being done to something or someone. And this sentence is structured that you see it out of the viewpoint of the object. What do I mean by this? Let's take a look at the sentence that we just did. Nikki does her homework. So at the first part here on screen, you have Nikki does her homework. That is the active tense. Below it, my sentence, you'll see SVO. That's to show you the structure. Subject, verb, object. Then on the other side of the gray arrow, that's when it has changed to passive voice. Homework is being done by Nikki. We are starting with our object. The O underneath homework, that's object, then verb, then subject. So here, subject and object have switched their positions. A passive voice sentence, it's from the perspective of the object. Homework is being done by Nikki. So now that we have a general overview, we don't just speak in the present tense. We do past tense and future tense, and sometimes it gets a bit mixed up. So tenses can change how passive and active sentences are said. And in English, we have many different structures, and these sentences are quite confusing sometimes, but they're not trying to confuse you. They're trying to tell you when and where something's happening. Now, I just said a whole bunch of words, and you're probably like, what is going on? This is what's going on. There's a whole bunch of active and passive voice structures and tenses that you have to deal with, and this can be quite confusing. But that's just telling you when something has happened and what the state of the action is. But that is something we can work on in an English lesson. Let's jump to Afrikaans. So the good news with Afrikaans is that it only has 3 tenses. And right now you're probably feeling like, yes, okay, something that's a little bit easier. Okay, let's see if it's easier. So first, we need to know what is what in Afrikaans, because active and passive tense is kind of written almost the same. Lydende and Bedrywende Vorm, and even first language speakers of Afrikaans get confused with what is what. So, which is which? So, to be bedrywig in Afrikaans, it's an actual word, is you are very busy, you're doing things the whole time. So thus, die bedrywende vorm is the active tense. You are bedrywig. Then lydend is kind of when you're suffering or you're going through a hard time. Jy ly. And like when you are going through a hard time or if you're really sick, you're not doing anything. You passive. So passive, lydend, die lydende vorm. That's how I remember the difference between the two, and I'm a first language Afrikaans speaker. So I'm hoping this helps you. So how is active and passive tense different? So active voice in English, we know it starts with the subject, then it's the verb, then it's the object. Is it the same in Afrikaans? Yes, it is. So here we start with die seun skryf 'n opstel. The boy writes an essay. Here we have a SVO sentence. It stays the same. And in Afrikaans, does it stay the same as well? Yes, it does. 'n opstel word deur die seun geskryf. The structure remains the same, which is awesome because you already know how to do it in English now. But tenses change things a little, not a lot, a little. So here we have the present tense, past tense, and future tense. And then we have something just above my head called passive tense markers. What is that? So in Afrikaans, we have two words you can find in a sentence that tells you in what tense an active or passive sentence has been written. In particular, a passive tense sentence. So when we look at the present tense passive voice section or explanation of die seun kook kos, then the passive tense sentence is kos, which is the object here, word deur die seun gekook. Word deur always goes with the present tense passive voice. It's always connected with present tense. If pigs could fly outside and it will still be word deur. If you are talking about the boy will be making food in the future, kos sal deur die seun gekook word. The passive tense marker there would be future tense. So let's look at this pretty picture of a koala eating a leaf. So bedrywende vorm, the active voice, is die koala eet 'n blaar. Die koala eats a leaf. Then the lydende vorm, the passive voice, 'n blaar word deur die koala geëet. Now, two important things to note about the sentence is I'm not saying blaar word deur 'n koala geëet, I'm saying 'n blaar. Whenever there's a or a d in front of your object, you keep it. You can't split it, you keep it and move it with into the passive voice. And then something else that's interesting. Geëet. There are two little dots on top of the second E. Now that's called a deelteken. And in Afrikaans, you add in deeltekens to help you pronunciate words correctly. If there wasn't a deelteken, it would have been 'n blaar word deur 'n koala geëet. That doesn't sound the same as geëet. So that deelteken is showing you that you have to say ge and then eet. Why is there a ge in any way? We're going to get to that now. So that is part of past tense. And past tense and just sentence structures in Afrikaans in general should not make you feel like Patrick Starfish over here who's totally overwhelmed. If you can remember certain rules for Afrikaans sentence structures, you can ace it. So let's work on past tense. So when you're thinking about past tense, I want you to imagine, oh, my apologies. I want you to imagine a bouncer and your sentence is a list of words or people that is trying to get into a party. And there's this angry looking bouncer. The verb gets a bit out of hand and the verb is trying to get into that party and the bouncer is like, no, I am kicking you to the back of the sentence. That's where you will find the verb at the back of the sentence. Now, where the verb was standing, there's an empty space. So you place a het in there because you can't leave an empty space in your sentence. That would just be strange. And then to make sure that that verb doesn't sneak into your party, you're going to add a prefix to it. You're going to add a ge. That's how you know a sentence has been written in the past tense. You will find a het and you will find a ge in most cases. In the second rule, we're going to get to the exceptions. So here's an example of a sentence that was in present tense. Nikki neem 'n foto. Nikki is taking a picture. Neem is the verb that's take. So now it's going to move into past tense. So first of all, what happens to that verb? It gets kicked to the back of the sentence and you add a ge in front of it. So it becomes geneem. And where that verb neem was, a het is placed. So that is why the sentence becomes Nikki het 'n foto geneem. Now, what happens when the second past tense rule? Well, some words have their own form in past tense. What? So, what happens is ek moet gaan slaap, which is I have to go to sleep. So, ek moes gaan slaap. So, moet becomes moes. So, it is a VIP. It has its own form in the past tense. Some other VIP verbs, if we can call them that, this is not all of them, this is some of them, is words like sal, that becomes so. I will swim, ek sal swim becomes ek sou swim. I would have swum. So that's how they change. Past tense rule 3. Some verbs do not get a ge. They do not get that prefix or that stamp that says you were trying to get into the party first. Why does this happen? So, in some cases, only a het is required. That's even more confusing. What's going on now? Why? So, there are some words that are the exception to the rule, and they are words that start with be, ge, her, ont, ver, weer, and onder. That's a mouthful, but it's important to remember these. So, for example, if I say ons begin, we start, we don't say ons het gebegin, because that just sounds weird to an Afrikaans speaker. It's like saying we began. So here that word begin starts with a BE, which is one of the exceptions. So it doesn't get a ge. It just says ons het begin. And these words, they are kind of special. So just remember this. Words that start with be, ge, her, ont, ver, weer, and onder. They do not need to get a ge in front of them. Now, let's work on a little bit of poetry, because I've seen that you guys sometimes struggle with poetry, and even I struggle with poetry sometimes. I mean, they are using words to paint a picture. Sometimes it can be quite tricky, especially if the writer is using older words like Old English or Old Afrikaans words, or words that we have never even used before. I mean, sometimes poets take 2 English words or 2 Afrikaans words, flop them together and form an entire new word, and we have to understand it. So let's look at a poem that I know you guys are doing at Teneo Online School right now. It's called Daarom by Ilna Stander. So at the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see I've actually translated the poem for you. It doesn't tell you what each sentence means, but it tells you what the translation is. So you can read through this on your own time. Pause the video that you're seeing now and just see what the translation was. I'm going to talk to you about what the actual meaning of each line is, because each line has meaning, and that paints the picture of what is going on in this poem. So, more about this poem, because we actually need to get a bit of an idea of what's going on. So first of all, this poem is written from the person's perspective. It's almost like the character in this poem is talking to you. He's telling you what's happening in his day. Then it has no rhyme scheme, so it's called a vrye vers, a free verse. So the end words in each line of poetry does not rhyme with the next one. Then the message or the theme of this poem, so keep that in mind when you are reading through it and trying to understand each line, is that teenagers are often struggling with self-image. That's what the main concept or idea behind this poem is. And quite often as a teenager, you would like to be part of certain social groups. However, sometimes just don't quite fit in. So thus the teenage years can be quite trying for a teenager, difficult. So here we'd say my profiel. That's my profile. So the speaker is focusing on themselves. So understanding every line of poetry, here we go. So in line 1 or 2, they are saying that they are like a speelskrikker. So what is speelskrikker? So it means speel is mirror, and if you skrik for something, you get a fright. So they are saying that they feel so ugly that they are actually scaring a mirror. Can you imagine how poorly you have to feel about yourself if you're saying that you are frightening to a mirror? So it already paints a picture of this character, and you're starting to really emphasize with them. Then they're saying in line 3 that this character is a dermatoloog syndrome. So here they are saying that you find alliteratie, which is alliteration, and a metaphor or metaphor with an ironic and sarcastic tone. Why would that be? So a dermatoloog is a dermatologist. And here he's saying here, I'm a dermatologist's dream. Now, no one really wants to go to a dermatologist, am I right? So a dermatologist here, he's trying to refer to his skin. He's saying he's looking in the mirror and I am giving the mirror a fright. I'm a dermatologist's dream. So you can deduce that maybe his skin isn't looking that great. So if your skin isn't looking that great, he probably has severe acne. So dermatoloog syndrome, that alliteration of the two D's, and the metaphor, he's not really a dermatologist's dream, but he's trying to be sarcastic. So in line 5, the speaker actually says that he has a moustache that's pale in color. We need to talk a little bit more about this because if you read line 5, it doesn't say anything about having a pale moustache. So we will look at the sentence shortly. So line 6 says hy is 'n krater tussen meisies. In Afrikaans, if you are a krater, it means you being a fool, you're making a joke of yourself. So if you say, ek maak my naam krater, I am making my name a crater, it means I am making a fool of myself. So the girls are thinking that he is a fool. So not only does he have bad acne and he has a barely developed moustache, the girls also think he's like foolish, a joke. So then line 7 says daarom. Now daarom is therefore. Therefore, so a reason is about to follow or response. It's about his poor self-image and also why he behaves the way that he behaves. So then let's look at line 5 again, the one where we're talking about him having a pale moustache. Where did we get that from? So in Afrikaans, when you say, oh, hy kry 'n bietjie dons, oh, he's getting a little bit of that fluff that chicks have, that's dons. So like a little baby chick, the animal. So when he is getting a little bit of fluff on his cheek, it means his beard is starting to grow. So dons is like that little beginnings of a moustache, and bleek means pale. So he's got this pale beginnings of a moustache growing on his bo-lip. Bo-lip is your upper lip. Then tussen die meisies, die groot krater. Between girls, the big joke. So he's in a really awkward spot. And then line 7 says, daarom antwoord ek nie. That daarom referring to therefore. Why is he behaving the way he's about to behave? So daarom antwoord ek nie. Therefore I don't answer. Met my deurslaan stem. Deurslaan stem is when your voice is still breaking. So he's having a really rough time. His voice is breaking, he has acne, the girls think he's a joke, and he doesn't even have a proper moustache. So can you imagine how that must feel? So the poet is using all of these ways to describe how this character is feeling to make you emphasize with them. Then in line 9, kruip ek eerder onder my kuif ononderhandelbaar weg. What does that mean? And why are there brackets in line 10? So kruip ek eerder onder my kuif weg. That means I'd rather hide behind or under my fringe. And ononderhandelbaar, that long word in the brackets says non-negotiable. So one, the bracket is showing that he will hide behind his fringe. That's not going to be negotiate it any other way. But the brackets also serve a visual purpose. They always want to make you like imagine brackets for the fringe. So kind of adding to the heaviness and trying to show how much he's hiding behind them. And then in oefen ek agteraf my afsakbroek stap. So oefen ek agteraf, to do something agteraf, to do it in secret when no one can see you. And also my afsakbroek stap. What does that refer to? Afsakbroek, when you research this poem, can have two meanings. Afsak is when something like settles downward, like if you put a rock in water, that sak af onder toe, it's moving downwards. And broek is pants, so his pants like are moving downwards. Now imagine how embarrassed and not good about yourself you would feel if your pants were like falling downward. So it's trying to say that he is not feeling good about himself. He has very low self-esteem. But in some cases, research shows that this poem can also mean that he is practicing in secret. He's like cool walk, because some guys put their pants like low riders. They hang very low. So in private, he is trying to practice a cool guy walk. Although personally, I would say that it refers more to his low self-esteem. I think that fits better with the theme of this poem. And daarom bid ek die tyd om in line 13. Therefore, I pray the time to pass, because obviously you would like this awkward teenage phase to pass. And then in line 14, intussen donder ek deure toe. What does that refer to? So here it's to emphasize frustration. In general, in Afrikaans, we don't use the word donder in a sentence unless you are referring to thunder. Thunder is donder weer, and you can say dit donder buite. It is thundering outside. But with donder as a word, in Afrikaans, it can almost be a swear word. It's not a polite word. And in this case, it's trying to say, I am slamming the door shut, but almost in a using this impolite word. And this impolite word has been used to emphasize his absolute frustration with the time that he is going through. And for you as the reader, it's trying to make you emphasize with him, because he's going through a really, really, really rough time right now. So here we have an entire summary of what I just discussed, and you can go read through it on your own. And then you did it. You survived your first lesson in Afrikaans. If you have any more questions for me, or if you would like to contact me for other lessons, you can find me at my email address that's on screen, and my Ateneo tutor profile is also attached on the screen, so you know what to look for when you're on the site. And I also tutor Afrikaans home language, English home language and first additional language, as well as geography and life sciences. It was lovely to meet you. Good luck with your prelims. I know you're going to ace it. Goodbye.